Welcome. I am Daisy, your hostess. The philosopher Aristotle, who lived during the 3rd century BC, stated that knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. Yet, going back to the 6th century, the words "know thyself" were carved at the entrance of the Temple of Apollo at the Sanctuary of Delphi. This was the location where once the Oracle of Delphi, the Pythia, and the most influential priestess and soothsayer in ancient Greece delivered cryptic prophecies on behalf of the god Apollo. Her advice was said to have shaped major political decisions, wars, and daily life across that classical world for 1,000 years. There must have been a good reason that these 2 words were left behind carved in stone. For how can we even master life if we don't know ourselves, the vehicle and essence which we're given to live this life? If you drive a car, and do it so naturally now, but do you remember those early lessons that provided you with some basic understanding on how to operate the vehicle? Oh, how quickly we forget, yet how much you've accomplished because of access to such mobility. My aim is to continue searching out wisdom to bring you golden nuggets in whatever way I can, because I believe that there's nothing new that I can tell you or share with you that hasn't already been expressed, written, painted, sung since the beginning of time. Yet we always need to do what? Put a new little twist to it, make it a little more to our times. But if your heart truly seeks, it's the same concept repeated over and over again. So hopefully one of these books will resonate with you. That is, if you're looking for tools to give you a bit more mobility in maneuvering the challenges of life. In this video, we will bring back to life the words of Lowell Ditzen from his book titled Secrets of Self-Mastery, an Inspirational Guide to the Mastery of Life. We will get through this in a 3-part video series, and as we get through this first video, the author will challenge us to stop living shallow lives and to begin tapping into the rich, deep well of inner strength, positivity, and wisdom, which is within us. This is where we get the high octane that helps us get through life's challenges. At first it may sound like fluff, yet when we look deeper, we soon discover that it is about living a life of intentional effort where we consistently reach inward to cultivate strength and peace. And the author will share with us how to do that. Without any further delay, I now turn the page. Secrets of Self-Mastery, an Inspirational Guide to the Mastery of Life by Lowell Ditzen. This book by a wise and kindly man is a volume of unusual helpfulness. It goes deeply into the basic problems of modern individuals and comes up with answers that really answer. Pleasant literary quality is blended with satisfying practicality. This book is directed to human need as all of us face it daily. Dr. Ditzen's thoroughgoing scholarship and profound understanding are communicated in a charming and highly readable style. Secrets of Self-Mastery can mean much to the reader personally and is also an excellent tool for helping other people. Signed by Norman Vincent Peale. Chapter 1. Keeping Water in the Deep Wells. From the book of Proverbs, chapter 23, verse 7. As he thinketh in his heart, so is he. From the book of Proverbs, chapter 25, verse 28. He that hath no rule over his own spirit is like a city that is broken down and without walls. From Carlyle, over the time thou hast no power. To redeem a world sunk in dishonesty has not been given thee. Solely over one man Therein thou hast a quite absolute, uncontrollable power. Him redeem. A quote by Jane Porter. When Alexander had subdued the world, and wept that none were left to dispute his arms, his tears were an involuntary tribute to a monarchy that he knew not, man's empire over himself. A quote by Pythagoras. No man is free who cannot command himself. A quote by Thoreau. Pursue, keep up with, circle round and round your life as a dog does his master's chase. Know your own bone, gnaw at it, bury it, unearth it, and gnaw it still. Some months ago, I traveled for several days along the dusty roads of southern India with 3 educated and intelligent Indians. They were alive to the tensions of the world and eager to discuss and debate, and we spent much time talking about the differences and frictions between the Orient and the Occident. One afternoon, as we were dodging the perennial ox carts and animals on the road, one of the 3 told of a European engineer who came to India to give technical supervision to a vital industrial project. He did his work well, but his influence was greatly diminished in Indian eyes when, on one occasion, he lost his temper. Another of the Indians broke in. You see, self-control and discipline are among our highest virtues. The third added, our sages put it this way: he who can master himself can control the world. Those words, which have often returned to me, speak pertinently to all men of the urgent needs in our modern Western life. The distilled wisdom of the meditative Indian thinker has its counterpart in many races and generations. Plato said, for his time and for all time, for the man who makes everything that leads to happiness or near to it to depend upon himself and not upon other men, such a one has adopted the very best plan for living happily. He, with other ancient Greek and Roman thinkers, was indicating that the happiness to be gained from life comes from within. To ignore the right inward adjustment of your needs and desires and outlooks is to make well-being impossible. The Bible repeats this counsel many times. He that ruleth his own spirit is better than he that taketh a city, is a theme played with many variations in the holy book of the Jew and the Christian. Louis XIV, King of France, in one of the longest reigns in European history from 1643 to 1715, faced unending sovereign problems. Although the Peace of Westphalia was signed in 1648 and the Peace of Pyrenees in 1659, there began in 1667 a long series of wars that lasted with little intermission to the end of his reign. France experienced successes and defeats on the field. Some domestic forward movements were made, but there were setbacks too. Strong achievements in the political sphere marked his reign. But there also were grave mistakes that were injurious to France. Louis XIV was expressing the wisdom learned by hard experience when he stated, "There is little that can withstand a man who can conquer himself." Louis XIV was saying that the Indian sages had said long before, "He who can master himself can control the world." Therein lies the key to the solution of many of our modern dilemmas, the answer to many of our personal and corporate problems, to some of our most poignant needs. The truth is affirmed that there can't be mastery of life on any frontier until individuals grow first in the art of mastering themselves. Each one of our national holidays racks up another high score of deaths on the highways. How many, I wonder, of the causes listed in report written by officers, if all the facts were known, might not really be irritation that stepped on the accelerator too fast, or fear that jammed on the brakes too hurriedly, or the devil-may-care attitude that threw discretion to the winds and gambled with tons of steel rushing at 70 miles an hour. Couldn't all these be more accurately labeled lack of self-mastery? How can there be control on the highways until there are individuals who know how to control themselves? 1 in 3 of our marriages ends in separation. I am sure that not 1 in a million starts out from the station labeled wedded life, intending to end up at the terminus called divorce. Why then is it so? The reasons are as legion as the individual situations. But those who serve as counselors attest that all too often the discipline that could have restrained the sharp word or the selfish attitude or the cruel act was absent. The control that provides patience, the wisdom that comes from standing by commitments and responsibilities were never achieved. A successful marriage, a secure home, requires individuals who face up to their partnership, not according to some intricate blueprint for wedded life, not by one mate's determination to control and dominate the other. There must be, first of all, a sincere effort to master themselves. Let us look at our personal histories. Won't most of us admit that our most tragic mistakes, our deepest remorse, our most wretched unhappiness were not caused by someone else's follies? The real cause was some lack within ourselves. And is it not true that our finest achievements, our deepest pleasures, which stand noble and clearly etched in memory, were created by our own efforts, by self-mastery? Each of us has known the warm glow that is our reward for having made a sure step forward in mastering ourselves. The spokes in the wheel of self-mastery are many and complex. In this volume, we will think about them together. The analogy of a wheel is a good one. The wheel eases the load, it helps move the weight. If properly rounded and supported by a firm hub and strong, well-placed spokes, it carries the load in purposeful fashion. The first thing for us to put in place is the hub of the wheel. All else is related to and dependent on it. The hub can be defined simply. The real mastery of life comes with growth in godliness. It can be said another way. We grow in self-mastery to that degree that there enters into our thinking and feeling the creative and perfect spirit which has made this creation for order, for justice, for truth, for beauty, for love, and for peace. It can be expressed simply, but it is the most powerful and profound thought in all creation. In a later chapter of this book, there will be a fuller consideration of the concept of God, but I think it is important to emphasize now that we will hold to no restrictive theological definition of the term God. We can find revelations of the creative force called God in all religions, and there are glimpses of God in everything that is good and true and beautiful. Shelley was expelled from Oxford University on the charge of atheism. In his own words, he made the profession that he was devoted to that beauty which penetrates and clasps and fills the world, scarce visible for extreme loveliness. We would not exclude Shelley. We would say that, indeed, he had a devotion to the spirit that we are calling God. There cannot be a limited definition of God. The finite cannot completely define the infinite. That which is limited, such as the mind of man, cannot circumscribe the limitless. After observing how the same chameleon appeared as red in color to one man and blue to another, Ramakrishna observed, "The devotee who has seen God in one aspect knows him in that aspect only, but he who has seen him in manifold aspects is alone in a position to say, all these different forms are of one God." The Christian faith affirms that Jesus reveals more of God than man had seen before. But Jesus himself did not limit the concept of God to what can be found in him. He affirmed, "The Father is greater than I." Henry Sloane Coffin has used an analogy I find helpful. He tells how he and fellow campers were seeking a water supply for a cabin in the mountains. On a hillside there were evidences of water, but those who examined the area had various opinions. One, seeing signs of dampness, was of the opinion that there was not a spring there. It was only slight drainage of the hillside. Another noted that not in one but in several places there were tiny trickles of water, which seemed to substantiate the theory that there really wasn't any one dependable stream. Another, looking at the site, felt that while there surely was some water located below the surface, there probably wasn't enough to supply the needs of the camping headquarters to be established below. Excavation, however, showed that the several damp areas made by tiny streamlets converged into one fine spring, producing an abundant flow. After the spring had been walled up into a well hole, it provided, on the hottest days of August, all the water needs for the campers and their families vacationing down in the valley. This analogy casts light on one facet of understanding the great gem called God. While there are many manifestations, there is one ultimate source of refreshment. Often it is indifferently passed by, as was the unseen spring beneath the topsoil of the mountainside. But still it is there, and, properly cleared and channeled, can be the source of life to those who live nearby. George Matheson summed up one aspect of the thought when he wrote, "Make me a captive, Lord, and then I shall be free. I sink in life's alarms when by myself I stand. Imprison me within thine arms, and strong shall be my hand." By whatever road man comes to God, it is there he finds his replenishment, his life. As we think about self-mastery, let us not identify it with the notion of a Spartan discipline that stands rigid and inflexible. Do not visualize that stern form of repression that digs in when it should bend before the storms of fate. There are, of course, times when it is necessary to hold the doors fast against cringing fear and cowardice. There are occasions when all of us must be able to say, "In the fell clutch of circumstance, I have not winced nor cried aloud. Under the bludgeoning of chance, my head is bloody, but unbowed." But not all the time. A firm hand and an iron arm are only a part of the secret. What we are seeking is a broader, deeper association that not only strengthens each individual for the hurricane tragedies of life, but prepares him for the day-by-day business of living. Man must be competent to meet the tiny irritations, the dull, picayune decisions. The continuous exercise of sheer willpower places an unbearable strain on the individual, whose taut nerves are one day bound to snap. Who wants to hide behind barred gates all the time, smothering passions, repressing concerns, fearing the facts of fate? Don't we prefer to keep the doors open, knowing that we can handle whatever comes, safe in the confidence that we are not slaves but masters? Each of us can sweep our soul clean of the devils. In their place will live a stronger spirit, illuminating that center of our being, which will drive the devils farther and farther into the darkness. In Dostoevsky's great book, Crime and Punishment, a young student, Raskolnikov falls under the domination of a terrifying idea. I am the final judge of my own thoughts and deeds. Who dares to tell me what I am allowed and not allowed to do? He then murders 2 women and condones his vicious acts by saying, "Am I not free to kill a loathsome, disgusting woman if I find it convenient to do so?" He chances to meet a girl named Sonia, who has been forced into prostitution to make money that her family might eat. In spite of her slavery, Sonia has remained pure in spirit and devout in her faith. There is an unforgettable scene in a shabby room as Sonia reads from the Bible to Raskolnikov the story of Lazarus being raised from the dead. Through the simple trust of that girl, reading the words of an ancient miracle, another miracle is wrought. The devil born of Raskolnikov's violent idea is driven out as God, the spirit of justice, of compassion, enters his troubled soul, and he learns the wisdom of Proverbs. Seize from thine own wisdom. Moved by remorse and repentance, Raskolnikov gives himself to the law and goes into penal servitude in Siberia. But though the man is chained, there is the feeling that he goes to a slave's drudgery, a more masterful man than he ever was in his so-called liberty. He illustrates the truth. Make me a captive lord, and then I shall be free. The final mastery of life is determined by who or what is master of ourselves. If we add to our deepest sensibilities the universal compassion, kindness, justice, wisdom, and harmony that are embedded in the core of creation, we are, in some sense, mastered, but we are masterful. We do not achieve this goal without thought and concern. The 4 walls of an empty apartment, transformed into a home of order and beauty, took someone's vision and effort. It is so too with the formation of the hub of our self-mastery. The God sense takes time and effort. One way we achieve it is by constantly exposing our mind to exalted thought and ennobling emotion. From the psychological standpoint, it might be termed educating the subconscious. We become what we think. Our spiritual health is the result of our spiritual diet. We say that we act according to our lights, but what light we have is the result of the experiences we have had, the ideas we have permitted to grip us, the ideal to which we have habitually looked, the kind of people with whom we have associated. Haven't you found at night, in those times between wakefulness and sleep, or when the subconscious comes to the borderline of consciousness, that light is sometimes shed on problems that are of primary concern? Occasionally, at those times, answers come or solutions are provided that seemed elusive in the conscious day-to-day activity. It is clear that the capacity to find an answer, discover a solution, is achieved by having stored the reservoirs of both the conscious and the deeper than conscious with high thought and deep feeling. One man I know who has had an amazing facility for solving problems has told me that his secret is the Bible. Since boyhood, he has read a chapter each day and also inspiring literature. He has shunned people who would waste his time and has sought out those who have achieved. When there is a difficulty he cannot quickly manage in the push of the day's activity, he postpones it for a spiritual fishing expedition. That is a time when he goes into a room alone, relaxes, and seeks to let his conscious thought be filled with perfect love and compassion, goodness and truth. He lets in as much of what God is as possible into my awareness. Only then does he look at his problem. All who know that man will tell you of the soundness and often the uncanny rightness of his judgments. We, in similar fashion, will achieve a growing mastery as we nourish our minds with quiet meditation and inspiring truth. We can daily educate the subconscious to provide light for our dark times. I've never been to Oberammergau, but the vivid and glowing reports of the Alpine Valley have carried me in imagination to that place, where the simple natives for generations have yearly produced a moving passion play. From childhood, the people of Oberammergau prepare for the role they will play in that portentous drama depicting the life and death of Jesus. I have been told that the visitor of Oberammergau is struck not only by the acting on the stage, but by the feeling that the people seem to live their parts each hour of the day, living all their lives with the picture of the ideal. Not only do they master the play, but it begins to master them, until, in their shops and homes, they show something of the dignity of Peter and James and John. They reflect something of the aura of the divine carpenter himself. You may legitimately say that this tense life of ours is in wide contrast to the uncomplicated life in that hamlet nestled in the Bavarian Alps. I will not dispute that, but our need for self-mastery is, therefore, greater still. Individuals today face decisions that affect the lives of many, decisions that call for vision and right and deep wisdom. There is a need for commanding, masterful attitudes in our homes, in our communities, in our national life. Attitudes that can heal frictions and bring together opposing points of view. God knows that we need to speak words we shall not have to recant or regret. We need a stability that will keep us on an even keel. The surest way to get it is to practice the art whose creed is, I will let more and more of the perfect spirit into the abode of my imperfections. To the people of my parish, I recently made a suggestion that has as much value as almost all else in my 7 years of preaching and teaching. I ask that every one of us begin each day with God. It is one of the most powerful suggestions I can give to you. Begin a regular regime of opening and closing each day with eternity, with the foreverness of order and holiness and goodwill. No matter where you are or what you're doing, driving to work, jostling along on the subway, returning from taking the children to school, or doing the breakfast dishes, say in your own words, let there be in me this day something of the silence and goodness and righteousness and love that is at the heart of eternity. This is the beginning and the end of the secret of growing self-mastery. We will not master be until we master find. End of chapter. Chapter 2. Using quiet for self-mastery. From the book of Isaiah, chapter 30, verse 15. In returning and rest shall ye be saved. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. A quote by Aeschylus. Be it mine to draw from wisdom fount, pure as it flows, that calm of soul which virtue only knows. A quote by Carlyle. Silence is the element in which great things fashion themselves together, that at length they may emerge full-formed and majestic into the daylight of life, which they are, thenceforth to rule. A quote by Emerson. Coolness and absence of heat and haste indicate fine qualities. A gentleman makes no noise, a lady is serene. Standing on the bare ground, my head bathed by the blithe air, and uplifted into infinite space, all mean egotism vanishes. The currents of the universal being circulate through me. A quote by Pascal. I have often said that all the misfortunes of men spring from their not knowing how to live quietly at home in their own rooms. Some time ago, at the season of the year when goldenrod dominates the meadows and bright red leaves challenge the solemn advents of winter, I received a letter from an old friend. It seems almost unbelievable, he wrote, that a few weeks ago I was paddling a canoe at night on a sequestered woodland lake. I was completely alone. A full moon was shining. I had an experience then. He went on to say, that must have been something like that of Admiral Byrd when he was alone in the Antarctic for so many months. You may recall how he spoke of feeling himself a part of the mystic harmony of all creation. He continued, I was beginning to find something of myself. There were responsiveness that I didn't know I had. But that's all now, far away and gone as I get pounded hour in and hour out by the pressures of my business and my demanding family at home. There was a wistfulness in that letter that haunts me still in recalling it. It was clear that something very important was being crowded out, something that only quiet and solitude were beginning to create or restore in that man. Christopher Morley was telling of this need and that of us, all who live in this clamorous time, when he wrote, Quiet is what we need. By telephone, the press, the mail, the doorbell, radio, AP or NOM or CIO, we're micro-organized and overgrown, with everybody's business but our own. Pipe it down, chain talkers, muffle and slow, the rapid pulse. I wonder if you know how good it feels sometimes to be alone. Incessantly loquacious generation, let Naya be your communication. Before the world comes open at the seams, invest some private enterprise in dreams. In unimpassioned silence we might find, if ever, what the author had in mind. Some of the most important steps we take on the road to self-mastery are steps that must be taken alone, in the depths of our quietude, like the silent roots of a tree that go deep into the earth and grapple and move the stones they encircle. So it is the right use of quietness that grow the roots of confidence in our personalities. Isaiah, the prophet, a man of steel conviction, a man who dealt head-on with perplexing problems in his own generation, was also saying this, not merely to his day, but to ours. In returning and rest shall ye be saved. In quietness and in confidence shall be your strength. You and I probably would like to say to Isaiah, you're hitting the nail on the head for us. We need strength. We need confidence for our task and our dilemmas. We'd like to know your secret. As we read your biography, Isaiah, we know what a stalwart prophet you were. You faced life squarely. We'd like to have what you had. Didn't you get your strength from those directed unflinching charges into the sociological and political issues of your day? Oh, no, no, replies Isaiah. That isn't the way at all. It's a returning to the solemnity, the mysteries, the grandeur whence your spirit came. I know from experience that this is the secret. Elijah, a prophet long before me, found it out. He said that you don't discover it in outward noise and conflict. You find it by listening to the still, small voice. And the condition for hearing it is solitude and quiet. You must make for yourself a time of tranquility. You have to keep a core of calmness that nothing on the outside can touch. You see, the strength of which I am speaking, the strength that means victory in noisy battles, comes first of all from some silent time when you've had the chance to cultivate your inner confidence alone. Look at some aspects of the controlled spirit and see how they have to be tapped to some roots of quiet. This is the matter of your own individuality. Each of us, every human being in the world, is distinct. That raw stuff of our unique selfhood is our most precious possession. But how easily it gets buffeted and crushed by what other people think, by the herd spirit, by the stereotype into which custom and prejudice try to fit us. we need quiet to keep in touch with ourselves, to recharge the soul that is uniquely ours. You need quiet to just be you rather than a straw man. Many who are concerned about modern man view with alarm the collectivistic theories of society which contend that the greatest fulfillment is in submerging individuality in the mold of society. Such a way of life can create dark and twisting pressures on the unique minds of men, who need freedom to write their poems, build their bridges, compose their melodies, explore the land, the sea, and the air. The discoveries that have lifted the human race have not come from planning commissions, committees, or conclaves. They have come from individuals who, in liberty and quietness, have drawn strength from their own selfhood. Forms of government that thwart such expression should be opposed. But even under less extreme circumstance, we face other more immediate pressures, some more subtle than others that impinge upon us all the time. Society is always squeezing us to live in a prescribed manner, to entertain like other people, to vacation like everyone else, to look alike, to keep up appearances comparable to our neighbors. Though some of these pressures prod us with demonic subtlety, I was confronted with a none too subtle type a short time ago when I was interested in buying an automobile. After learning a bit about the price of new cars, I ruminated silently that it would be fitting and proper to find a car of 1940 vintage that had been treated kindly by someone and which would be obtained at a most moderate price before it was put out to the junkyard pasture. In the course of my shopping, I came across an acquaintance who introduced me to a whole new vocabulary, that of the used car dealer. For your edification, he informed me that a pig was a car that wasn't popular. It didn't sell promptly. No one liked it. A tomato was one that had a questionable background. You couldn't tell what might happen with it. The transmission could fall out or a wheel might come off. But a cream puff was a satisfactory late model car. Bearing the proper nomenclature in mind, I said firmly, "Well, I've come to look, then, at your cheapest nice clean pigs." My friend looked at me incredulously and said with great earnestness, "Ditzen, you can't look at any pig. You should buy a new car." I shook my head in definite negation. "That's out." In confidential tones, he pressed on, "Why, you're a professional man, a member of dignified calling. You can't run around in a pig. After all, you wouldn't think of wearing a dirty shirt. People judge you by the car you drive. You couldn't go back to your community and let those nice people there see you driving on the street in a pig. They'd be ashamed of you. The very least you can do is buy a cream puff." I confess that the wisdom and hard to come by common sense gained in quiet succumbed to the stereotype argument he presented. I fell into the trap of pride and rationalization that says you don't want to be out of step or appear too different or embarrass your children, etc., etc. And so I ended up driving away, not in the best, but in a fairly good, used cream puff. How real can be such pressures that plague us? I recount that ridiculous incident because I hope it points up that we ought to do a lot more intelligent smiling at the foolish hurdles we jump in order to protect our precious egos from being bruised by others. What precious time we waste that could be used in the silent strengthening of our distinct selfhood. It is the seed of quiet and its fruits that helps to develop a strong personality that can stand up masterfully to all kinds of pressures. Some months ago, I met a most appealing Negro woman who is employed by our State Department and is doing a wonderful job for our government and people in Asia. Drawn by her self-possession and dignity, I was interested to learn her background. She told me she, an orphan, had been raised by a wise and kind grandmother in a tiny Kansas town. That grandmother had been denied a formal education, but she had practiced the secret of the ancient prophet Isaiah. "In quietness and confidence shall be your strength." She had an inner calm from which came expressions of wisdom that went deep and remained forever with the little granddaughter who shared her life and love. One thing she told the child was this: never let any outside slight or hurt or handicap get inside and stay to hurt you. The second thing the older woman counseled was, be what you are best intended to be. Be it in your soul. Break the stereotypes of what others think our people are. The little girl who heard those words is now a strong and gracious woman speaking impeccable English. Her voice is well modulated. Her enunciation is clear. She is well groomed, intelligent, self-possessed. What made her that way were insights from that older woman who had won her wisdom in quietude and then inspired a little girl to grow into the unique human being she has become. The development of a masterful personality is lopsided unless there is both a developing of and then a holding back of the reservoirs of quiet. The complete outpouring of our physical, emotional, and psychic energy into any task or cause leaves us hollow. The reserving of ourselves is basic to victory in life. The most masterful personalities I have known have, in one way or another, kept their own counsel or deliberately retained their inner quietude. How often Jesus was quiet. The 30 silent years, as they are called, when he lived with his parents in the hillside village of Nazareth, above the plains of Esdraelon, were given over to long periods of silent thinking, of a steady communing with his own nature. That discipline gave him confidence and strength for the years of public ministry. Above all, it provided him with serenity and the assurance of the tumultuous external perplexities would not be met with more noisy conflict. The means to their resolution lay in the depth and strength of his inner quietude. The adage, speech is silver but silence is golden, points to an important aspect of the masterful personality. Considering this important quality led Carlyle to express it thus: speech is of time, silence is of eternity, and led him to muse further on the individuals who had really made contributions to their societies. They were not the ones who spent themselves wastefully on the noisy insanity of the world. They were noble citizens of the great empire of silence. A country that has none or few of these is in a bad way, like a forest which had no roots, which had all turned into leaves and boughs, which must soon wither and be no forest. Woe for us if we had nothing but what we can show or speak. The most important thing about you is not the seen part, not the man in a business or profession, not the woman as a homemaker, mother, participant in community affairs. The important thing is your relationship to the empire of silence. I recall a conference with an ambassador of our country to a troubled area of the world. Afterward, a publisher of discrimination who had been present commented, "What struck me was his silence. That man has inner reserves. I felt that strength. He'll do all right in his tough spot." The same holds true for you and me. To do all right in the exacting task of living, we need to cultivate our own inner quiet. Out of this comes the person who will be a victor in life. We are not masters but slaves if we sell our birthright of individuality for the mess of pottage called conformity. There are times when we need the light touch, the capacity to laugh off unnecessary obligations which we take on to keep up appearances, and there is warm satisfaction in directing our personality toward the goal for which it is best suited, but always preserve an area of deep seriousness where your uniqueness is protected, where it cannot be pressured or you will be lost. Here will lie your convictions, your deepest thoughts, your assurance of yourself, and what is worthwhile. In 1876, Thomas Huxley made an address at the convocation of Johns Hopkins University. In his speech, he said that he was unimpressed with America's size or material achievements. You and your descendants, he said, have to ascertain whether this great mass will hold together under the forms of a republic when population thickens in your great cities and communism and socialism will claim to be heard. Over 80 years ago, he showed amazing insight into the course of history. But a more significant observation was this: the one great condition of success, your sole safeguard, is the moral worth and intellectual clearness of the individual citizens. Who will deny it? How can there be a free nation, a republic of order, unless there are individuals with intellectual clarity and who have, deep within themselves, come to an understanding of what is morally right and wrong and worthwhile? Ask next how there can be a citizenry who will live by moral insight. How can there be people who do not merely repeat sentimentally a pledge of allegiance to the flag with the words liberty and justice for all, but also will see that it must be applied in their own lives? How can there be individuals who will not be swayed by prejudice, by noise, by mob violence? How else then, in the foundations laid by individuals who also build within the quietude of their own minds and souls? The tensions and the injustices existing in some of the southern sections of our country are not held within by state lines. They are not isolated by geography. This whole people is bound up with what happens in any part of the nation. Although the whole world may observe this internal tension, quiet is heaviest on our own conscience, as a treason against God, who made us equal, a treason against the most sacred principles we have as a people, liberty and justice for all. How do we keep on an even keel? How rectify wrongs that have been done and are still being done? I'm convinced it's not by continued strife, bitter argument, recriminations, nor by more rebelliousness and violence. It must come about by the communication of a conviction that an individual knows to be true. It reaches out silently and touches the mind and soul of another. It is gripping beyond argument. It is a final pronouncement that says, the words liberty and justice have been inwardly heard, and I know them to be right and true. This kind of confidence, this kind of self-mastery, which refuses to be diluted or overcome by the problems it faces, which patiently, persistently, courageously strives to make our land more Christian and more truly American, comes from people who feel deeply, first of all, within their own quietude. Introspection requires caution and balance, or it can become a dangerous thing. It is the means to a goal, not an end in itself. Many a mental patient suffering from an illness known as schizophrenia has become ill because he has refused to or is unable to maintain his way on the hard path of reality. He has sought escape in another world where he is safe from life's burdens and cares and can, in imagination, be free of all responsibilities. How much more desirable this is than struggling with an environment where there is always one difficulty or another, where you may fall on your face and have little in the way of achievement or distinction. The way of health is neither living only on the outside nor withdrawal into the self. There must be a balance of both. There must be a going to life, as the prophet Isaiah would say. But my friend, don't forget the returning and the rest. There is your saving. You come into the quietude of yourself that you may go to life again with confidence and strength. Let's say to ourselves that there is a need for each of us to make experiments to learn how best to develop the resources of our own solitude. It's only by doing this that we gain our soundest understanding about God. That deep knowing is beyond what the preacher can say to us from the pulpit, or the theologian can put in his volume, or godly people can convey to us as we walk with them through life. The unshakable assurance that there is a purpose at the heart of all creation comes not by argument or logic. It is heard in the sound of eternity echoing in our soul. But there must be receptiveness inside in order to hear the truth. The deep, inner knowing that we were made for harmony and not discord, that we were made to achieve peace and goodwill in the world, comes the same way, not from listening to the cries of the exterior world, with its many loud words lacking in meaning and its agitated activity of little worth. You ask, how does one come to an understanding of God? By reading His Word? Yes. By communicating with others? Yes. But most effectively by developing an inner peace. Confidence that we came out of the heart of the creating power, that we were put here to build a useful and significant life, and that our spirit will be claimed at the end by Him who made us, opens the door to the noblest generosity that you and I can achieve. We gain a perspective on life and action toward life. It enables us to look on the world without frustration or bitterness or aimlessness. We see it as a place where our lives contribute meaning to creation, and we are proud and happy to be alive. Emerson, in his essay Uses of Great Men, speaks of his admiration for men of strength and eloquence who stand on legs of iron, superbly fulfilling their mission in life, whether it be with the sword or the staff. Then he goes on, but I find him greater when he can abolish himself and all heroes and offices by letting in this element of reason, irrespective of persons, this irresistible upward force, so great that the potentate is nothing. Then follows this wonderful sentence. Then he is a monarch who gives a constitution to his people, a pontiff who preaches the equality of souls and releases his servants from their barbarous homages, an emperor who can spare his empire. That kind of heroic living, that real greatness of spirit of which we are all capable, comes from the individual who has returned to the source whence he came. And the path is through communion with one's heart, one of the surest roads leading to knowledge of God. With knowledge of God comes a richest kind of independence and freedom. Rudyard Kipling gave his 1923 the rectorial address at St. Andrews University, Scotland, under the title Independence. In it, amid many incisive and positive observations, he affirmed, let the counsel of thy own heart stand, for there is no man more faithful unto thee than it. For a man's mind is sometime wont to show him more than even watchmen who sit above in a high tower. By independence, I do not mean freedom from restraints or responsibilities. More importantly, I mean a harmony of outward action with inner integrity, joined by a humble but firm belief in what is right. A man speaking and acting in accordance with his beliefs will feel no fear, no shame, no regret. The opinions and acts of others have their place, but they cannot buy off the independent man or tarnish what he has found in his own quietude. If we will but listen, we will hear the counsel that gives us confidence and strength from our inward voices, which are only heard in quietness and tranquility. Here is a door to the understanding of God, the way to generous and useful outgoingness, to independence of spirit. This indeed is an added step on the road to self-mastery. End of chapter. Chapter 3. The place of faith in self-mastery. A quote from the book of Matthew, chapter 9, verse 29. According to your faith be it done unto you. A quote by O.W. Holmes Jr. To fight out a war, you must believe something and want something with all your might. So must you do to carry anything else to an end worth reaching. More than that, you must be willing to commit yourself to a course, perhaps a long and hard one, without being able to foresee exactly where you will come out. A quote by Kersop Lake. Faith is not belief in spite of evidence, but life in scorn of consequence, a courageous thrust in the great purpose of all things, and pressing forward to finish the work which is in sight, whatever the price may be. A quote by Tolstoy. Faith is the force of life. A quote by Voltaire. Systems exercise the mind, but faith enlightens and guides it. A quote by Walt Whitman. I swear I will never henceforth have to do with the faith that tells the best. I will have to do only with that faith that leaves the best untold. In the course of the years, I have talked to a number of people who have said, I don't have any faith, or I've lost my faith. It's important to understand what is meant by the word faith. Based on Latin and Greek derivations, our modern English word faith means trust or belief. It implies unshakable persuasion about a person or a matter. It is used to describe a confidence that is indestructible, an assurance that is fused into the very nature of a person's being, as carbon is merged with iron to produce steel. If we use that word with such meaning, then we will reply to the individual who says he has no faith, it isn't so. You have to have some faith to go on existing. A woman years ago told me that she could not believe in God. To her, Jesus was merely a Palestinian teacher with visions of grandeur around whom legend had grown up. The church meant only pious mumbo-jumbo and hypocrisy. How about people? Faith in them? Heavens, no. There's no capacity for goodness in man. What keeps any semblance of decency and order, she went on to say, it's prohibitive law, romantic sentimentality, and the pressure of mediocre mores. Recalling that someone had mentioned to me that she was interested in health and diet, I moved to that area. She swooped upon the new topic like a trout rising to a hatch of flies in the pool. The virtues of yogurt and wheat germ were praised with the same definiteness that religion and all its trappings had been damned. It was like a crescendo in a symphony, as she affirmed. But it's really blackstrap molasses that holds the secret. In mock amazement, I said, You don't mean to say that you have faith in that horrible-looking stuff? I certainly do. There has to be faith in something, or we wouldn't take the next step or draw the next breath. At the end of the blackest, most aimless trail of despair and bitterness, a man, just to go on existing, must believe that it's better to be alive than dead. In Graham Greene's play, The Potting Shed, one of the characters was James Califer, a man who couldn't find meaning in anything. He says, a room without faith is like a marriage from which love has gone. All that's left are habits and pet names and sentimental objects picked up on beaches and in foreign towns that don't mean anything anymore. And patience everywhere like a fog. But there had to be some faith in Califer's life, if nothing more than the flickering hope that somewhere, somehow, there was some meaning, or he wouldn't have gone on. Our real faith is not necessarily that which we put into words. It may not be found in our verbal professions. But whatever it is, it's the basis by which we live, whether it be adding blackstrap molasses to our diet or turning back from some chasm of futility to a plateau of hope. Some people live by a growing confidence that God is and that they are His children. Some are held by the belief that there is no mastery in life unless we uphold certain standards of virtue. At every level, it is faith of one kind or another that comes first. The person who says that he has lost his faith, I often find, hasn't faced the fact that a healthy faith is a vital, a changing thing. It ought to be a growing experience. Many a young person needs to lose the belief that life was made for his pleasure and learn by experience that his pleasure is only found in serving his fellow man. There may be someone reading these lines who still has a childish idea of God, which was never enlarged by mature thinking, which lacks relatedness to life's experiences. Many such individuals discard something valuable which needs only to grow with them. No, don't say you've lost your faith. You may have lost some concept which, like the butterfly that breaks from its cocoon, you have now outgrown. Ask yourself, was it an adequate faith? Was it one that you could live by all the time? Letting it slip away can be the impetus for establishing a wider, finer structure of faith than you ever had before. Theodore Beza said centuries ago to the King of Navarre, "Sire, it belongs to the Church of God to receive blows and give them, but it will please your majesty to take notice that it is an anvil which has wore out many hammers." It's basic to have something like that to build the masterful life. Faith must be like an anvil that takes life's blows. If it can't stand up to fate's events and circumstances, it is not adequate. Each of us needs a faith stronger than the impact of all the hammers of time and tragedy. To acquire it, there are some aspects of faith we likely should slow off. When we talk about faith, we're talking about an active force like an energy. It needs to be replenished. It must be guarded and converted into life, just as the waters of a dam must be watched and channeled before being converted into the electricity that will illumine a city. Where there is such a dynamic faith, man may mold life according to his will. The truth is powerfully expressed in many incidents in the Bible. One story tells of two blind men who appealed to Jesus, desiring to have their sight restored. As the master passed by, they cried out, "Have mercy on us." You might expect Jesus to reply, "Of course, I know you want to see. I sympathize deeply with the affliction that is yours. Your darkness is mine. Out of the light that comes from the Creator you now will see. Behold, your sight is restored." No, he didn't say that at all. Observe carefully. Jesus did not answer a word. He did not stop, but continued on, followed by a few curious ones, plus the loyal disciples who went with him. After some time, they came to a village and sought refuge for the night in a friendly house. The blind men had continued to follow him during the long hours, their plea for mercy unfulfilled. Surely the master had been aware of them all the time. Apparently they had to do more than just wish and petition for their vision. The blind men, too, entered the house, and there, in the quiet, Jesus turned to them and asked, "Believe ye that I am able to do this?" Jesus was searching deep into the hearts of these men. It was the crucial test of faith. The blind men respond, "Yeah, Lord." Then touched he their eyes, saying, "According to your faith be it done unto you." This is a spiritual force beyond all measure. It says, if you believe deeply, if you have faith, life will be bent that way before you. Have first a faith that God made you to master life, and you will master be. Just wanting something, just desiring and thinking about it, wistfully dreaming, hopefully pleading, isn't enough. You must really believe it is possible to achieve it, and you must follow your faith to wherever it leads. What we are talking about here is not just blind faith. It does not avoid recognition of facts and use of good sense. Rather, it is built upon them. As J.P. Jacks, a principal at one of Oxford's colleges, expressed it, faith is reason grown courageous. Some years back, I, with other students of Norman E. Richardson, a wonderfully stimulating teacher, was engaged in some research that resulted in a volume entitled Toward a More Efficient Church. The purpose of the book was to guide parishes in developing a well-rounded congregational life. In the course of our studies, we investigated the most significant symbols used across the centuries to portray Christian values. We found the symbol most frequently used for faith was an anchor, and it is easy to understand why. Faith is not a burst of light that illuminates for a moment and then leaves us in darkness again. It is not something that can be imposed on us from the outside by authority. It isn't necessarily what we verbally confess in creed. Rather, it's an anchor that drags deep in the ocean of longing, feeling, perceiving. We can't completely see the bottom, but we know it is there. Our limited vision cannot penetrate that depth. But this we know. In the dark unseen, that anchor finds a lodging place. And in that firm holding, our acts of faith are confirmed. The anchor is tied to the ship of our life. Its value is beyond any price, because when the storms blow, it steadies the ship, saves it from destruction. We have courage to believe that the anchor will hold and that we will ride out any hurricane. This dynamic faith gives above all else an unshakable confidence in God's providence. He rules. Although man doesn't understand the storm and cannot see the reason for its damage, faith in God creates calm in the heart. Yes, faith is reason grown courageous. It requires faith to courageously affirm that what appears to be only turmoil has some part, a significant part, in bringing things more aright than ever before. Faith says all things, not just the nice things, not just some things, work together for good to those that love God. The struggle for that faith at times may cause mental anguish and heartbreak. Bitter tears may flow, but faith is the anchor that will preserve and strengthen us to humbly say, "Not my will, but thine be done." Some of the most thoughtful scholars of this generation have contended, as did Leslie Paul a few years ago in his book, The Annihilation of Man, that the violence of our times reflects man's revolt against the emptiness of a life that has lost such an anchor of faith. Leslie Paul was thinking of the faith that has produced the great principles of Western civilization: justice, mercy, freedom. These, he saw, are being undermined. They are tottering, and in many places we have seen them already crumble and fall before onslaughts of cruelty and terror. There is an absence of what Plato called intellectual principle. Examine the history of our Western civilization, and you will see that its moral structures is the result of a faith born of the Greek, Jewish, and Christian traditions. Built into its core was a powerful faith in God and a faith in man. That faith has been weakened. For many, it has become a habitual rather than an intellectual principle that holds life anchored securely against storms. It was so with Germany in 1930. That nation epitomized the finest Western civilization, educated, scientific, cultured, going through all the customary accepted motions of Christian doctrine and practice. But it was superficial gloss, concealing the fact that the honest values and principles in individuals and in the culture as a whole had become eroded. Let us never forget what happened there. It could happen elsewhere. Treachery supplanting justice. Mercy completely strangled by cruelty. The warmth of freedom enslaved in cold shackles. Truth thrown from its place of preeminence, and king lies put in its place. To master the twisting, chaotic forces that can destroy our civilization, there has to be faith in not lip service to freedom and justice and mercy, the conviction that those qualities sprang from the heart that brought forth this vast and mysterious creation. Sir Richard Livingston, a few years back, observed that every civilization grows up around a core of beliefs and values, observing that when that healthy nerve becomes deadened, the culture decays and then dies. He turned over to our modern life and saw that that is happening to us in the 20th century. We have become, he contends, a civilization of means without ends, with an ample body but with a meager soul, with a rich inheritance but without clear values of a ruling principle. Well, a culture, a civilization is made up of people, of individuals, and individuals who work at rebuilding a healthy faith in themselves not only have an anchor for their own life, they also bring health to their civilization. To grow, then, in a vigorous faith is to provide a tonic for our sick times. Now let us move to the important question of how to achieve the vigorous faith that means personal and social health. We cannot gain a faith without continuous intellectual seeking and growing. The great enemies of faith on any level are suspicion and skepticism. You can have confidence in an individual, but let a cloud of suspicion about that individual enter your awareness, and your faith in that individual lessens, perhaps dies. But more than that happens. Doubt is an insidious poison which, like an infection, enters the body at one point and soon permeates the whole system. Something must be immediately done when that virus enters our consciousness. One individual I know who has developed a positive and healthy faith toward God and man and life has told me that on any level, whether it be suspicion or disbelief regarding an individual or an idea, she immediately backs off to seek the facts and weighs the evidence. But most of all, she puts suspicion aside and tries to place emphasis on what is positive. If it is an individual who causes her doubt, she centers her thought and concern on the good qualities of that person. The intensity of her original faith may have to be modified, but on the other hand, by not unreasonably condemning the person because of some flaw, she brings balance to bear on her judgment. To develop this evaluation of situation takes time. It requires the constructive and positive effort of observation, of honest appraisal and synthesis, but out of it emerges a new foundation for faith, and it usually produces a stronger, maturer, sounder faith. To the individuals who have said, "I've lost my faith," I have on occasion replied, "Well, what are you doing about it? If the good bucket that has carried water from the well develops a leak and doesn't hold water anymore, the only way I know to make the vessel useful again is to plug up the hole. If that isn't satisfactory, how about getting another bucket? How foolish we are when in self-pity and doubt we mourn, 'I have lost something,' but then make no effort to go back over the path we traveled to determine where it was lost." Years ago, in postgraduate work, a fellow classmate engaged in an action that I thought was reprehensible. Whereas he had been high in my estimation, he was now no lower than mud. But I was unhappy in my feeling toward him. I found the incident troubling me in sleep. It made for embarrassing and unpleasant moments in our context together. After some time, I decided to speak to him openly and frankly about the incident. Doing so gave him an opportunity to tell his side of the story. It so happened that his side revealed that I had misjudged him. Circumstantial evidence had altogether misrepresented the real facts of the case. With my faith in him restored and modified, our friendship was reestablished. George Santayana wrote in a letter to William Lyon Phelps, "Faith is an assurance inwardly prompted, springing from the irrepressible impulse to do, to fight, to triumph." Such an assurance that passed off in successful living has to receive constant attention and care. one of our finest satisfaction in life comes from what we create or do ourselves. Some time ago, I visited the farm of a friend. The property was purchased already furnished with interesting items. My friend and his family had spent great effort to improve the property and to add to the hospitable furnishings. As we wandered through the rooms, I felt that the keenest satisfaction was shown when we were shown what had been done with their own hands. We painted this room. You see that table over there? Our son made that in his woodworking class. I wish you could have seen this room before we took out the wall that was there. The whole family working together refinished the floors. Then we prepared the walls and painted the ceiling. What had been done with their own effort was what was most meaningful. The faith that is most meaningful to us has come from our efforts and fashioning. As we use our own minds, make observations, and then crystallize judgment, we build up an inward treasure that gives us deep satisfaction. One of the most helpful things we can do is to stimulate each other to think about and explore this area of belief and value judgments. When I am asked to perform the marriage of young people, I make occasion to speak to them of the importance of working cooperatively together in all places of life. From years of counseling with people who have difficulties in their marriage, I tell them the most important area of all is faith. The togetherness that really supports us in life doesn't come as we stand looking at each other, but rather as together we look outwardly at the abiding principles and values, the eternal truths. In talking together, in sharing the results of thinking and reading with one's mate or with a close associate or friend, both the foundation and the tower of one's faith are made firmer. Many an individual grows in faith through the experience of private as well as public worship. In the long and bitter struggles of Holland to achieve its independence, there was one particularly dark period when the little nation seemed to be almost overwhelmed. In the heat of the conflict, one of the general of William of Orange sent a missive inquiring if he had achieved an alliance with England or France. Such an alliance would have provided much needed aid in those desperate hours. The reply of William is recorded thus: "You ask me if I have made a treaty for aid with any great foreign power, and I answer that before I undertook the cause of the oppressed Christians in these provinces, I make a close alliance with the King of Kings, and I doubt not that he will give us the victory." The faith of William of Orange, which gave power and confidence to his words and actions, and which had a large part in the eventual victory for the Netherlands, is faith that you and I can experience in worship. We permit ourselves at times to lead such mundane and grubby lives, carrying commitments from which we cannot escape. But we bend so heavily under them that we see nothing else. We are in danger of losing the sense of wonder and of awe, qualities indispensable to a great faith and a life of breadth and openness. Go to church, not critically, not with the feeling that you are there as a spectator. Go as a participator. The clergyman will have his inadequacies, the choir may sing off-key, you may see people there whose actions outside that building are far from worthy, but don't let these matters trouble you. You are in a sacred place, a place where men and women have come through the centuries to pray to God. No matter how humble the sanctuary may be, say to yourself that the doors of this place open onto the vast mystery of the meaning of all things. You are there humbly and receptively, opening your heart to it all. Sing the great hymns, pray the prayers from the treasury of spiritual experience. Let your wonderment at your origin and your destiny rise on wings of faith. Let the people, the physical place fall away, and you will add another dimension to experience to give inner support and outward power. The matter of prayer, both personal and corporate, is an avenue for us to explore and cultivate as a means to a growing faith. As you think of God as being the spirit of perfect love and truth, harmony and peace, the spirit of creative compassion that enfolds all mankind and all creation. A breadth and depth will come to your mind and your soul as you meditate on the divine power and seek to stand in its presence. In The Struggle Within, Olgavana Lloyd Wright attests, we can imagine and strengthen our faith with prayer. Prayer is a powerful emanation. That's true. As we engage in regular prayer, we bring into our person a peace and calm that counteracts worry and frustration. Many are able to enrich their faith by reading the Bible and by renewing contact with the beginnings of our religious heritage. When I speak of reading the Bible, I do not mean to begin at the first chapter of Genesis and read the entire book straight through. There is unquestioned merit in that. Several lifetimes could be spent in studying the Bible, and the spiritual treasures it possesses in every book would not be exhausted. But to develop faith, I think it best to select a Bible within the Bible. Read the Psalms, some of the great biographies of the Old Testament, the messages of the prophets, alight with insights, and of course, the crowning revelations in the New Testament. All are rich sources to stimulate the mind and nourish the soul. The life and teachings of Jesus, together with the chaste literary beauty of the Bible, will bring you quiet and calm, as well as faith. There comes to my mind, among the many stories from the Bible, the unforgettable one about the father and his demented son. All the love and the misery of the parents' thwarted hopes are felt in his words to the master. If thou canst do anything, have compassion on us and help us. Jesus responds to his heart-rending plea. If thou canst believe, all things are possible to him that believes. You see what happened. The Father is not merely a spectator. He is brought into the activity. He is a participator. Jesus tells him that his own belief, his cry for belief to overcome his unbelief, will open the way to the power that conquers. With the Father's intense longing fused to unswerving faith, the Master is able to restore the boy. If there is to be any healing, any miracle wrought, any movement forward, it takes more than mere vocal sentiment or surface desire to turn the tide. Jesus has shown you the way. Believe with such absorbed intensity, such unwavering persistence, that every cell of your body, every impulse of your mind is concentrated toward the end you desire. And each time you read the Bible, the truth will be underlined that faith is not passive resistance nor quiet waiting. It is an active, powerful force within you. Association and friendship with people of faith is another way to grow in faith ourselves. How frequently it has been said, and rightly, that faith can't be taught. It has to be caught. The true spirit of wholesome faith is communicated to others, who in turn pass it on to those who come in contact with them. One of the best examples over the centuries has been friendship with Jesus of Nazareth, the radiant source of motivating a faith that this world can neither give nor take away. Create friendship with men like Socrates, Gandhi, Albert Schweitzer. Through their writing, some of their persuasions will fire your own convictions. I do not speak of such men with any intent or desire to exclude those who are living by our side daily. There are individuals of noble character and great capacity around us. Make occasion to meet them. Be with them. They have something to give us. One of the values of seeking association with individuals of faith is the perspective and assurance we gain from them. You remember the childish story of the little chicken who, pausing under an oak tree, was bumped on the head by a falling acorn? Fear struck, the little chick cried out the sky was falling. Similarly, left to our own devices, we can easily be thrown off and tangent by the intrusions and pains of the day. But association with individuals who have, by meditation and experience, developed a more stable faith can help us to build our own more soundly. Faith is developed too by acting on the basis of the knowledge and faith we have. George Buttrick put it, we must live as if. This requirement is levied on every realm of life. The scientist must experiment as if. Those two little words are the synonyms of hypothesis, and science proceeds by hypotheses. The scientist does not know the inmost nature that his diagnosis is correct. The highway to knowledge is to act as if. You have, let us say, a feeling that men are basically good. It is not a firmly set faith yet, but if you act as though it were true, you will find that the belief is settling down more and more into a solid foundation for some of your deepest convictions. You will find that men are good. David Livingstone said, speaking of faith, it requires perpetual propaganda to attest its genuineness. That is the final point to remember. You do not grow in faith merely by discussing it abstractly, by playing with one possibility and then another. You grow into it by affirming it, by living it. Take a firm stand on a conviction and say, I will look on life and act in life as though this were final truth. Doing that, you will find that it is so and your faith will be strengthened. Or you will find that it is not altogether so, and you will need to stand more firmly until you have won. As you work at it, yours will be the conviction that life can be molded after your faith. That is one of the most powerful thoughts and truths in all human experience, put with beautiful simplicity by Jesus. According to your faith, be it done unto you. End of chapter. Before we turn the page, please do leave me a comment. Let me know you are here. Let me know what golden nugget you found in these first few chapters. And if you find this useful and you know someone that may be able to benefit, please do share with your friends, family, and like-minded people.